Good morning, church. We are certainly glad that you're here with us. I'm a little nervous based on that video. I hope our slides are correct, but if they're not, I just want you to cue up that video again while we regain our thoughts up here. I think that'd be perfect. This is Senior Sunday. We are super excited to have you. We have a great class of seniors this year, great leadership, and I'm glad that you've been able to see some of our young men up here today. Luke McClanahan's going to be talking with me today, and ever since he's walked in this morning, he's just been cool as a cucumber and patting me on the shoulder and saying, Jordan, it's okay. We're going to do fine. And so I really appreciate Luke and just the person that he is, but I'll let him introduce himself a bit more.
Yeah, as he said, I'm Luke McClanahan. Many of you, probably most of you, know my parents. I'm excited that Jordan asked me because I believe I have been up here one other time helping preach, and I'm really excited to do it again. I enjoyed it last time, and I'm ready to get started, actually. So I want to start off with this question right here. Who do you think God is? And most of the time we don't do stuff like this, but I want you to turn to your neighbor and share at least one thought of who you think God is. I'm going to send Jordan out into the audience to get a couple of answers. Think about that, turn to your neighbor, tell him who you think God is.
All right, so this is totally unscripted, so I don't know what's going to happen. I'm immediately going to come to this area right here because I feel like there's a lot of wisdom in this area right here. Davis, who do you think God is?
God is in all of us and with all of us and sustains us every day and created everything about us.
Perfect. And then Steve, what about you?
He's love.
God is love. You can't get any better than that. Any volunteers, anybody else want to talk? Let me see some hands. Somebody be brave. Do you want to say something? What's your name?
Cadence.
Cadence. Who do you think God is?
God is a person in the world who loves us and cherishes us through love and death.
Yes, everybody give Cadence a round of applause. That was awesome. God is a person who loves us and cherishes us through his life and death. I love it. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? 3 answers. That's all right. That's all right. This is what my teens do to me when I ask them too. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for participating.
Okay, hold on to those answers. We'll revisit that later. I'm not going to talk about that right now immediately. But we're going to be focusing today on Luke 11, and I'm going to read the first half of the passage that we're going to be dealing with, that being verses 5 through 8. Or not. We will read that, and we'll move on later. Okay, this is starting in verse 5. Then he said to them, "Suppose one of you has a friend and goes to him at midnight and says to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has come to me from a journey, and I have nothing to set before him.' And from inside he answers and says, 'Do not bother me. The door has already been shut, and my children and I are in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything.' I tell you, even though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, yet because of his persistence, he will get up and give him as much as he needs." So I want to start and say, if you were to come and wake me up at midnight, you would see a Luke McClanahan that you would not want to see. I do not recommend coming to wake me up at midnight for your own safety. You would see a Luke McClanahan who's been asleep for multiple hours, whose hair is messed up, who is in a somewhat sedated state and would not be making a whole lot of sense. So, one, for your own safety, waking somebody up at midnight is generally not a good idea. And 2, you remember back in middle school, elementary school, when you would go over, and you'd have a sleepover, you'd spend the night at somebody's house, and, the first guy to go to sleep was always the one who was going to get messed with. They're going to put his hand in a bowl of warm water, or, draw a mustache on him, or put shaving cream in his hand. We all know what it looks like when that guy wakes up. He is not happy to have been woken up and disturbed from his slumber. And in the same way, if that was to happen to me, I would not be happy. So back when we were young, getting woken up at midnight was, something funny or, just a light disturbance. But now, most of us are at the age where waking up at midnight or something happening in the middle of the night is not something lighthearted. Generally, that means something bad has happened. You might be sick in the night, or somebody in your family might be sick at night. Maybe there's somebody knocking on your door. Maybe it's law enforcement or something bad. Generally, disturbances in the night tend to not be so positive. So we know that when this grown neighbor is going to his neighbor in the middle of the night because he desperately needs something, that this is a serious occasion. This isn't, him going to mess with his neighbor. This is something that he seriously needs.
So I don't know what's going on with our PowerPoint. It's a little out of order, but that's okay. We're just gonna go with it. So this would be a very difficult position for me. If I were the neighbor that somebody had come to my house in the middle of the night and they had said, hey, I need food, this traveler came to my house, I would be excited that I could come to their aid. And let me give you a little context of this story. So travelers in this time, they don't call ahead, they don't make reservations, they don't get on their phones and say, hey, I'm gonna be at your place. They just show up. And the traveling conditions are incredibly chaotic. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe your donkey breaks a leg. Maybe there's storms. There's no way for you to know when you're going to arrive at somebody's house. So in the context of this day, hospitality was incredibly important because you had to rely on a network of friends if you were going to stay somewhere. You had to rely on being able to go to somebody's house, knock in the middle of the night and say, hey, I need a place to sleep. And people were expected to take you in. I love hosting people. I love having a house full of people. It's just one of my favorite things in life. We've had people come and live with us. We've had friends who kind of got in tough situations and they come and stay with us for a month or two at a time. And we love that. So if somebody were to come at my door and knock in the middle of the night and say, hey, I need a place to stay, I would be honored. And I would be excited to be able to host them. But you go a little bit further in the story, and you're totally caught unprepared. And this is where I would be very on edge, because I hate burdening other people. I would hate having to go to somebody's house, knock in the middle of the night and say, hey, I need your help. I'm okay being the one to help, but I do not like having to put my burden on other people, especially in the middle of the night. So in this time, the way the houses were kind of set up is they all backed up to each other and were kind of connected around an open courtyard. So your back door, you would go out to your courtyard, and that would be your kitchen. So probably 3-4 houses were all connected together with this open courtyard in the middle, and you would just run across the courtyard to your neighbor's back door, knock on their door, and that's probably the context of this story. So if you're all sharing a kitchen, you know which neighbor has bread. Okay, and okay, that they cooked a lot today. Maybe they'll have something for me to borrow for my guests. And so you go and you knock it on the door in the middle of the night, and these are not big houses, okay? So everybody's sleeping in one room, the whole family's sleeping in one room, and if you knock on the door, you're not just waking up friend Bob, you're waking up all of Bob's family, okay? And as a newborn parent, if you come to my house in the middle of the night, and you knock and you wake up all my kids, there are going to be consequences for me, not for you. And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be pretty. And so I would be in such a terribly awkward position because I would want to be a very good host. I would want to be the person to help, but I would not want to be the person who needs help. And I feel like a lot of us fall into that position pretty frequently. So when I was in college, I was in a social club at Harding University called Knights. And Knights, during their pledge week, they have this big event called the Joust. And all of your pledges, your squires, they have to build their own armor out of cardboard. And it's a really big deal. It's one of the highlights of pledge week at Harding. And so I was up late at night, and I hadn't started yet. It was the night before the joust, and I was super anxious. I didn't know how I was going to do this. I didn't have my material together. And so I feel bad saying this on Senior Sunday. I'm not encouraging any of you seniors to do this. I snuck out of the dorm. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I went to this place downtown. It was like an appliance place. It always had just tons of cardboard in the back. Okay. And so I pulled in. It was probably, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning. I pulled into this appliance store, and I'm like going around the back door and to gain all this cardboard. And so what happens is a cop car just like zooms in and like parks right behind my car, and 2 other cop cars just zoom in right at the same time because they think I'm robbing the place, because who goes to a place at 2 a.m. to not rob a place? And so like I'm just sitting there, I'm by myself, I'm super scared. Don't get pulled over. I've never had a midnight law enforcement. I don't know what the McClanahans are doing, but I've never had that happen to me. And so I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I just say, I'm getting cardboard. And we have this discussion, and they leave. And so when I get back to the dorm, I'm in a super awkward position because this has taken a lot longer than my buddies had expected. And so they've all gone to bed. And so it's like 3 a.m. All my friends are in bed. I'm locked out of the dorms, and I don't know what to do. But my parents live in Searcy, okay? And so I could just go out to Mom and Dad's house. I could have a nice place to sleep. I would have to kind of swallow my pride and tell them the story. But I don't want to have to do that because I'm not the kind of person who wants to ask for help. I hate asking for help. And so I sleep in my car in a Lennox parking lot because that's the logical thing to do. Because I hate having to ask people for help. And that's a silly example. That's an easy example. And I feel like when things get so much more complex in life, when things get so much hairier in life, you know, when our marriages are struggling, when we're struggling with addiction, or we're struggling with loneliness, anxiety, whatever it may be, we are even less likely to ask for help. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think one of the reasons that we don't want to do that is embarrassment. You know, I didn't want to have to knock on my parents' door in the middle of the night and say, hey, Mom and Dad, I almost got arrested for stealing cardboard. Because I don't want to have to go through that. All teens know that your parents are going to ask a lot of questions, right? That's just what parents do. I'm sure that the person in the parable here didn't want to knock on the door because they knew you might get unsolicited advice. You know, you should always have extra bread in your house. You just get that reprimand. And we don't need that reprimand in our time of need. We don't need that extra unsolicited advice in that time of need. You know, the I told you so's, that all those things can come into play, and you don't want to have to reach out because you're embarrassed. And when you do reach out, you're afraid that somebody's going to shame you because of the situation you find yourself in. I think another thing that keeps me from reaching out is just this individualistic mindset that we have. In Jesus' time, it was a collectivistic community. We are an individualistic community. When I lived in the Dominican Republic for a couple years, you could walk down the street and every door would be open. You could walk into somebody's house and expect to have a cup of coffee offered to you. If I walked into a stranger's house here, I would probably get shot. I wouldn't get a shot of espresso. I would get a shot of something else. And that's the way that our community is set up. We have these high walls because we take care of ourselves. We take care of our own. We love the saying, you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, which is a great thing, but that's you doing that on your own. And I have that mindset. I don't want to have to ask you to help because I want to be able to do this on my own. My own sin, I want to be able to deal with it. My own shame, that's mine alone. That's not your burden, that's mine. And I want to be able to do all these things on my own because I have that individualistic nature. You know, Jesus says something super interesting. he says that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I find that interesting because I don't find it to be true. Sometimes being a Christian is hard. It's difficult. There's burdens, there's a heavy load, and I feel like I'm on this yoke, and I feel like I'm pulling, and I'm pulling, and I'm pulling, and it's just difficult. But the thing about a yoke is it's meant for two people to pull. And Jesus wants us to join with him so that he can help us with our burdens. And I think Jesus wants us to join with our brothers and sisters so that we can help each other with our burdens. It's not mine alone. It's mine and yours. And it's not yours alone. It's yours and mine. And I think that's what Jesus was calling for us to do when he set up the church as a whole. Another thing that is so difficult for me is I know you got your burdens. I know that you got to get the kids to soccer. I know that you have work and it's stressful. I know that you want to spend time with your family, that you want to spend time, just find space for yourself. And I know that you have all of these things in your life as well. And so I don't want to put my burden on you to where you feel like you have to be there for me all the time. And all of these reasons come to mind where I wouldn't want to go and knock on a neighbor's door at midnight. I don't want to be embarrassed by them. I want to be able to do things on my own. And I know that they have their own life. This all came kind of ahead to me on Thursday. So right now we have a 2-month-old little Bella Rose, and she's just a sweet, precious little gift. And we're bringing her up to work with us right now. She's in the office with us, which makes us incredibly productive. But Thursday, Audrey had stepped out of the office, and so I had Bella Rose, and I was holding her, and she just lost it. I mean, just as angry as I have ever seen her, just screaming, crying, mad. And I'm sitting there in my office, and I know every single person in this office complex can hear this screaming baby. And so I shut my door, and I'm in the back corner, just like patting her bottom and just not shaking her. Don't shake my baby. Rocking her, bouncing her. And I'm just trying to soothe her, and I'm trying to soothe her. It's okay, baby, it's okay. And it just, nothing is working. Nothing is working. And I come to this realization, I need help. I don't physically have what she needs right now. There is nothing that I can do. And I go through all three of these. I don't even want to walk out because I don't want anybody out there to think that I can't take care of my girl. Even though in that moment, I literally couldn't take care of my girl. I don't want people to think, oh, he's not a great father because he can't soothe his child. I didn't want to have to go and Audrey worked so hard and she has that girl all day. I wanted to give her a break. I didn't want to put my burden back on her. I wanted to be able to take care of her on my own, which is just ridiculous because I can't do that. And that's not the way that God set it up to do. And when on the other side of it, I know that every single person in that office knows exactly what I was going through, and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care that my little girl's crying. They don't care that I can't soothe her. They don't think that I'm a bad father because they've all been in that situation before. But in the middle of that, in the heat of that, all I can think about is my own pride and how I don't want to have to step outside of that. If you skip ahead a couple chapters in Luke, you get to the prodigal son. It's in chapter 15. In the prodigal son, we see this son who comes up and says, hey, I want my inheritance. I need all these things. I'm going to go out on my own. He goes out on his own. He blows his fortune. Tough times come, and he's sitting in a pigsty longing for their food. And so in chapter 15, verse 7, I'm sorry. 17, sorry. Verse 17, it says, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. And I think that's a pivotal point in the story that we don't think about. because he realizes that there's something better for him out there. But we don't hear all the other voices inside his head. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm in this bit of need, I'm thinking, man, I'm going to have to go to my dad and I'm going to have to tell him what I've done. And he can respond to me with every single I told you so. I told you you wouldn't know how to manage your money. I told you not to go out on your own. I told you that this was a better place for you. He can respond with every single I told you so. He can shame me, but I need him. You know, I know my dad is busy. He owns this whole plantation. So maybe I'll just go in as a servant. Maybe I'll just go in as the lowest of the low so that I don't have to burden him with the things that I've done. You know, I wish that I were the person that would have been able to take my dad's inheritance, my money, and to go and to use it well and to be successful on my own. I wish I would have been all of these things. You don't read that in that verse because he knows the goodness of his father. And so when he goes back to his father, we find this God, this kind father waiting for him, expecting him to come back, who never shames him, and he welcomes him with open arms.
So I want you to think about your best friend. And we have all these reasons to not ask for help, but think about just your best friend, like that one person that you trust more than any of your other friends. And you think about if you went to that friend either at midnight literally or in a time in your life that could metaphorically be midnight, you know, dark, potentially bad things are happening, would that best friend not get up and give you everything that you need? So I want to ask, if any one of these brothers and sisters in this room came to you, I'm talking to each one of you individually, would you not help them out in their time that they need it most? Can I get a show of hands? Who would be willing to help somebody if they came to you literally at midnight and needed something? So we have an entire room of people who would be willing to help, potentially even a brother or sister that they don't know with whatever they need. So we have all of these stumbling blocks. You know, you don't want to be embarrassed and you don't want to burden somebody else. But we have so many people who all are willing to help. You know, it's this pseudo-conflict. There's not really a conflict there that's prohibiting you from going and asking somebody for help, because everybody is going to be willing to help you. It's all inside. It's all things that we feel that are prohibiting us from going and asking people. So I want to say, you saw all the hands that just went up. You saw all the people that are willing to help, even strangers. And so I want to say, we should all be treating each other like best friends in our time of need. We should all be willing to go to somebody else at this church, somebody else that we know, from around here, friends, and be willing to ask anybody for help. Pride shouldn't get in the way of us asking people for what we need. So, what I had on the slide that was missed was, treat me like your friend, because friends are going to help each other. If we treat each other like we're friends in our time of need, you know, I see my best friend, and none of those stumbling blocks can get in the way of me going to best friends and saying, I need help. It's when they're not so close to you that it's hard to ask. So, treat me like your friend. I'll treat you like my friend, and we should all be treating each other like friends, because that way there won't be stumbling blocks for us going to ask others for help. So, if we have physical friends who are willing to help us, and a physical family who's willing to help us, then how much more is our Heavenly Father going to help us? So I continue with Luke 5, starting in verse 9. It says, so I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Now suppose one of your fathers is asked by his son for a fish. He will not give him a snake instead of a fish, will he? Or if he is asked for an egg, he will not give him a scorpion, will he? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? So I want to spend just a little bit of time reflecting on some physical gifts that we've been given and some insight in some gifts given to both me and Jordan by family members. Jordan?
Yeah, so best gift I've ever received. one of them. I've received many good gifts in my life. When I was graduating, I got this folder, and it's super special to me because unbeknownst to me, I had no idea this was happening, but every year on my birthday for 18 years, my mom had been writing me a letter. And she'd been writing about the things that I had accomplished that year, the man that she saw me growing into being, and I had no idea this was happening. And then when I graduated, she gave that to me. And it's interesting because I don't read it all the time, but every few years, whenever I go back and read it, I can see my life's trajectory. And she's a sweet, angelic woman, but she also kind of gives it to me apart. I remember one letter, she's like, "You were really bad this year." she didn't hold back. Which I remember reading that for the first time. I was like, Mom doesn't say that to me. Like, I'm her angel. But she gave me a glimpse into who I am through a parent's eyes. And that was a gift, because through my eyes, I know all my screw-ups. I know all my faults. I know all the things that I'm doing wrong. And it helps me to see myself from kind of a 30,000-foot view, that I'm doing okay and that I'm moving in a good direction. And it kind of gave me a little bit of an idea of probably how God sees me, as opposed to the critical way that I see myself.
So on the other hand, my favorite gift was given to me when I was still pretty young. I was turning maybe 5 or 6. And my dad gave me what was an iPod Nano at the time. And that was huge to me. I had seen my sisters. They both had one. And so my dad gives me this iPod Nano on my birthday, and I open it up, and he had already preloaded 500 songs, because that was the max capacity of the iPod Nano, 500 songs. He had already preloaded 500 songs that either he knew that I liked or he knew that I would like onto this iPod Nano. And I am convinced that had he not given me that iPod Nano, my hobbies today, and really even my life, would be completely different. It started there, and I loved that music, which made me interested in more of the music that he owned, and I got into that, and then eventually I got into playing instruments, formed a band, and pretty well music makes up a huge portion of my free time. You know, that's my hobby, that's what I do. And I'm convinced that had I not started early, had he not started me early with this iPod, that potentially I wouldn't have developed that love and be where I am now. So in Jordan's case, you have this gift that rewards him for his time. He didn't know that he was waiting for that gift. You know, it was a surprise, but he waited 18 years for those letters, and when he got it, he got to see 18 years of work. He was rewarded for his patience. And in my case, it was given to me early, and I think that it shaped the course of my life. So we have these different kinds of gifts. We have parents who both seem to know what we need, who both have something in mind that will help us and that will reward us. So then, as the verse says, if you then being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, if our physical parents have enough insight to give us exactly what we need, how much more will our Heavenly Father know what to give us?
So this all circles back around to, who do you think God is? Do you think that God is an I told you so God, where you come and knock on his door at night and he says, I told you shouldn't have made that decision? Do you think that God is a God that wants you to carry your burdens on your own? Do you think that God is a God that is so busy with all the burdens of the world that he doesn't care about your burdens? It all goes back to the question, who do you think God is? Because what you answered earlier is very different than how you answer it. Because we all know what to say with our lips. A lot of us have been in church for a long time, and we know what the right answers are. But how you answer that question, whether you allow yourselves to rely on God, whether you allow yourselves to rely on each other in this church, is very, very different than what you answer. And so today, we are going to give you an opportunity. Our elders are going to stand up, and they're going to be in the aisles. If you need to rely on someone, if you have a heavy burden, I promise you these men are men of character. They're men of integrity. They're men that love this church. they're not I told you so men. They are the kind of men that welcome you with arms wide open, who are willing to get up in the middle of the night and give you the loaf of bread that you need. So if our elders could get in the aisles while we stand and sing, you can go and pray with them.
And summarize what has been said, but this class is so great because they never pretend to be something that they're not. And I appreciate their honesty and the authenticity for that. They do not pretend to have all the answers, and they are so honest about that, which allowed for us to have great talks about faith, about walking, about living out your life for Christ. And I mean, it was at times challenging, but I wouldn't want anything else. I wouldn't want them to just answer the answers that they want to say just because we can move on to the next question. So it was great. They are all very great friends to their friends, and I've seen that. They are very hospitable to strangers. I mean, they are a part of my life, like I said, and they meet a lot of strangers through me, and they have been all so good, nice, genuine, gentle, and hospitable to everyone that they meet. And so what I want to tell you guys is that you are doing exceptionally well, and that you are great, and I love you. The other thing that I hope you learn through that is that Kate, Robin, and I are not the only one that worked with you, but we had it was a partnership. It was a work with Jordan, Audrey, the elders, some of the deacons. We could not have done this without anyone, and so I love that I had this opportunity. I thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life, because it shaped what I think about when I think about church. It's us and our relationships, and how much we love, and how much we love each other, and how we're treating other people. And so that's sort of the things that I wanted to share. I would like to bring all the seniors up at the front with their families, if that's okay, and the elders, please. Once you're like, go in the middle. And then Robin to Grant. Oh, there's a lot of people, and it's so great to just see everyone here. Please join us in the prayer. Dear Father, we come to you with humble hearts, as we thank you for the grace you have for allowing us to be a part of this day, to celebrate these young men and women within our family, Lord. They're great. They have a great heart to get to know you more, and to go on this adventure that's called life, Lord, as they move on to the next chapter of their lives, one that is truly not easy, one that is going to be filled with challenges, decisions, and other opportunity, Lord, that us as a family become resources to them, support to them, and help them remind who they are, and help them remind as well who God is. Please be in their lives, and please always remind them that you are good, that you are faithful, that you're forgiven, that you're compassionate, and that you are on their side wherever they go. We thank you for Jesus Christ, and in his name we pray. Amen.